One has been catching up with Rianna Jarrett in Abbottstown this week. That it was the launch of the INTERSPORT Elverys FAI Summer Soccer Schools programme. The Summer Soccer Schools return to over 300 venues across Ireland across July and August. And aren't we delighted for it? The cater for boys and girls aged 6 to 14. It'll be a fun and inclusive environment is what it says in front of me. Training provided by FAI accredited coaches.
OTB AM.
All right, we are here with Rianna Jarrett. Rianna, how are you keeping?
Yeah, no, I'm good, thank you. How are things?
All good. So, how have the last few weeks been for you? Obviously, there's been a bit of time for change in your club career.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. Obviously, we're about 10 days post-season now. So, finished the season with a cup game, and then obviously the news broke that I was being released from Brighton. But for me, I've just been having a little bit of downtime. Obviously, it's been a long season, a lot of football played, but now my focus has shifted to the double header we have coming up against Iceland.
Yeah, there should be cracking games. How does the news get broken to you over the last few weeks?
So we have a talk, we have meetings. I had contact with the coaching staff, and obviously they let us know their decision, and then there's options there for feedback or conversations. But no, I had an open and honest conversation with Hope Powell, the manager. It was a good talk. I had a great year with them. It was a great learning curve, but obviously time for something new.
How do you feel during that conversation?
I suppose no one likes to hear that they're being released, but for me, I knew it was coming. I knew that I need to be playing. The manager knows that I need to be playing, and unfortunately I wasn't getting the game time that I wanted or that she wanted to give me. But that's football. Things change all the time, season to season, especially in the women's game. There's a lot of change going on. So for me, as I said, it's been a great experience. Brighton were a fantastic club. I couldn't have asked for a better club to be involved in, especially with all the COVID restrictions and not being able to get home as often as maybe would have been possible in previous years. It was a fantastic club, and I've learned a lot about the game, about myself as a player and myself as a person. So it's definitely an experience that I'll cherish.
What was the biggest takeaway from playing in the WSL?
I suppose it's just the speed of the game, the level of the game, and I suppose the quality of players as well. Obviously coming from the Women's National League here in Ireland, it's not quite that level. So I've learned to adapt. I've learned to adapt my playing style. I've learned to adapt to different opposition, different opponents, and then what different games require. And for me, that's a lesson that I'll carry with me for the rest of my career.
That's interesting. So it's almost, is there more opposition analysis? Is there more work going into analysing your performances afterwards when you talk about trying to come up against different sorts of opponents at that standard? I
think when you go into a full-time environment, there's more resources available, and obviously there is more focus, and I suppose it comes down to the finer detail. I suppose there's players coming in every year, top quality players, and the quality of players in the league is getting higher and higher every year. So I suppose the focus shifts to not only team analysis but also individual work, unit work, and for me, obviously, we're exposed to that at international level and briefly with club before I moved to Brighton. So it's just, I suppose, improving the overall knowledge of the game, and I suppose being able to react quickly to what's gone on the weekend, that you're back in the next day, kind of no time to dally on a good result or a negative result.
What was the best thing about being a full-time athlete at this point? Because I guess it was your first time going into a fully professional setup.
I suppose the biggest thing for me is I went from working a 9-to-5 job, kind of, you can say football was on the side, so trying to juggle my trainings, trying to juggle my matches, trying to juggle my work schedule, as well as my extra kind of gym work, extra fitness work. And I think for me, going into a full-time environment, that's all taken care for you. All you have to worry about is your performance, and obviously working with the management and the strength conditioning coach to get the best out of you. I think I've an extra 8 hours in the day where I didn't have previously, and that was probably the biggest thing for me. I wasn't, I suppose, chasing my tail on a weekly basis. I had some downtime, and for me that was probably the strangest part, was having time to just kind of think about things or just kind of relax and take my mind off of football then as well.
What were you doing with the downtime?
So I most recently bought a PlayStation 5. So I suppose I switched off completely. But now I was fortunate enough that the first half of the season that I was living with Megan Connolly and Denise O'Sullivan, so we had a good household, and even though COVID restrictions were there, obviously we know each other from playing international football, so that was fantastic. But we also had kind of like a little coffee club in Brighton, so just takeaway coffees, walks along the seafront, and it was nice, I suppose, to have friends over there and to be able to switch off from football together and not just be stuck, I suppose, thinking about football 24/7.
What's the PS5 like?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Is it?
I mean, I haven't had a games console since I had the Xbox 360.
Oh, that's a big step up.
Yeah, big step up. So I used to play the PS4 with my brother and stuff. So I suppose I really got it more to connect with my two brothers and my friends back home. Obviously playing games with them, you chat away with them for hours and the time would just pass. So for me that was probably the main reason why I got it, but also I do enjoy playing games consoles as well, and sure, why not?
What are you playing on it?
Call of Duty, FIFA, and I recently downloaded Crash Bandicoot as well.
Okay,
so,
the classic.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely,
really.
have to have the classics as well.
And who do you play with on FIFA mostly?
So it'd be my twin brother Jordan.
I mean your team.
What team?
Yeah.
I kind of chop and change. I'm an Arsenal fan, so I don't pick Arsenal because they're not great. So I kind of swap between Dortmund and Bayern, really.
Right.
Those would be my two teams.
Solid choice. On the WSL, how good are the likes of Chelsea and Manchester City?
They're fantastic. I mean, you seen Chelsea. They were unbeaten for so many games. Obviously, we managed to beat them 2-1 with Brighton, but even that game was fantastic. I think the game was 1-1 with an hour gone, and they bring on like Frank Kirby. They bring on Harder and G. I mean, they're bringing on 3 world-class players, and I think just to be able to have that calibre on your bench, never mind on the pitch, is fantastic. But you look at the investment that they're putting into the game, and that's what it's all about. You look at, they're bringing in the Americans. You looked at not so long ago when Chelsea brought in Sam Kerr, obviously the biggest transfer in women's football, and I think as much as the women's game grows and as much as the money is pumped into, I think the only way teams are going to be able to keep up with those is if they invest the money as well. You look at Arsenal; they were top of the top for how many years, and they've kind of drifted a little bit away. Obviously they got Champions League football again this year, which is fantastic, but it'll be interesting to see what they're like next year. Obviously changing manager and losing a few players as well.
Because that was the incredible thing, I'd imagine, from your perspective, is that you weren't just making the step up to the WSL. The WSL was also making a step up this season. It was like a runaway train and you were on the train.
No, obviously it's fantastic. As a player, you want to put yourself up there against the best. You want to see where you stand, and obviously I'm fortunate enough that I got to play against the likes of Man City, Man United, Arsenal this season, and there's a lot of lessons that I've learned from those games, and seeing those players at the top and seeing what they do and where they are, and I suppose seeing the gap between myself and them, I suppose, would be the biggest thing.
What happens next for you?
So obviously we've the double header against Iceland, so my focus is solely shifted on that. Obviously looking to get into camp, and I'm looking to get a solid performance, and we're looking to have a positive camp leading into the qualifiers in September. I have an agent that's working on the offers that we've received at the minute, and hopefully in a few weeks' time we'll know where I'm heading. But for me it's just important to find the club that I'll be happy with, that I can play, and that I can get back to playing week in, week out.
I presume there wouldn't be any limit to the borders that you'd cross to go play football. Obviously a couple of your teammates have played in Italy over the past couple of seasons. Obviously a few of them have played in the United States. The game is global now, properly global, where you can make a good living no matter where you go. Yeah,
obviously the women's game is growing in all countries. It's even growing here in Ireland. But for me, it's about not rushing into a decision and finding a team that suits me. Obviously managers look for different things and different personnel, and obviously each season, each team are looking for different fits. So for me, it's about finding out as much information as I can about teams, and then hopefully finding the right fit for me, where I'll be in a position where I can grow as a person. I have a lot more to learn, and I feel that once I learn, I have a lot more to give as well.
On the international team then, it's been obviously a really interesting couple of years. The disappointment of the last qualification campaign was there, but from your own standpoint, it was interesting watching the 2 Germany games, for example, where in the first one you were up front on your own, at sometimes chasing a cause against a team that were in the ascendancy for the majority of the game, and then I think in the second game there was 2 of you up front basically. How did those 2 experiences compare, and not which one do you prefer, but which one do you think gets the best out of you as a striker?
Well, obviously as a striker you want to be involved, and as a striker you don't want to be isolated. You don't want to have gaps between you and the other units, and I think that was the important thing. I think we learnt that from the first Germany game, that if there is gaps, that they will exploit them, and I think we learned that lesson early on in the first Germany game. Now we tightened things up going into the second half, but obviously at that point the damage was already done. So I think for us going into the second game, it was like, how do we set up bets to stop those gaps, to limit their free flow and play? And I think we done that in the second game, and I think we were in it up until they got the third goal. Obviously we're pushing for an equaliser at that point at 2-1 down, but I think for us, even though the games were close to each other, as in only 2 months between them, I think there was still a lot of growth between us, between the first game and the second game, and obviously you learn your lessons from the first game, and I think that showed in the second Germany game, and I think for us that's the important part. Obviously we've the qualifiers coming up now in September, where it's going to be difficult games, and it's about learning on the spot and bringing that into the next game, and I think we've already shown that in quick succession we can grow. Even if you look at the Denmark game and the Belgium game, there was a lot of growth between those two games, and those two games were back to back, and I think that's exactly what the qualifiers are going to be like, and we're looking to do the same in this double header against Iceland.
Is it fair to say that there's almost a learning experience in having to play without the ball? Like obviously against those teams, they're going to have quite a lot of possession, and then from your point of view, it's pressing from the front quite a bit. I presume that can be an exhausting experience at times against those teams.
Yeah, I think obviously we're a small nation, and we're growing every year, every game, but we know that we're going to go into those sort of games without the ball, but it's about what we do. I think there's different ways that you can play without the ball. You can invite pressure where you're getting deeper and deeper, and that's something that we're trying not to do, because I think if you drop deeper and deeper and invite that pressure, eventually the pressure is going to tell, and they're going to get their goals. So for us, it's about, yes, we don't have the ball, but there's so many ways that we can impact the game and affect the game without the ball. We can force them into areas that we want to force them in. We can try and win the ball high up, but obviously it's different opposition calls for different tactics. But for us at the minute, we're looking to master a formation that we've recently set up in, and we're just looking to improve. Each game we play, there's options to learn, but then there's also positives to take from each game as well, and I think with a combination of both, I think we'll be in a fantastic place come September, and it's just about pushing on from there then.
Yeah, things seem certainly in a good place. Rianna, great to chat to you. Best of luck with the 2 Iceland games, and best of luck with your future as well over the summer.
Thank you very much.
OTB AM.
That's the Ireland striker Rianna Jarrett chatting to Owen as it was announced that the FAI Summer Soccer Schools are returning to over 300 venues across Ireland in July and August, and they cater for boys and girls between 6 and 14 in a fun and inclusive environment. Training provided by FAI accredited coaches, and I'm sure if you head along to fai.ie you'll get all the good stuff up there in terms of registration.